Alright, so this will be the beginning of somewhat of a series in regards to PAILs and RAILs of the FRS system, the functional range systems, created by Dr. Andre Spina. Shout out to Dre.
Snoop Dogg!
So we're going to kind of break it down and talk about the science behind the stretching and how to do it, when to do it, and the effects of doing it. So PAILs and RAILs stands for progressive angular isometric loading and regressive angular isometric loading. So you're taking whatever exercise or stretch that you're doing and you're isometrically loading both sides of the tissue. With PAILs and RAILs, it's basically going to utilize the concept of isometric training with stretching. It allows us to create tissue adaptation, and it can be used to progressively overload the tissue. You can use it in a rehabilitation setting. You can also use it in a setting where you're limited in range of motion, where you can't necessarily acquire or activate that tissue. So the PAILs and RAILs are basically, you can think of it of a bridge between the connective tissue and the neurological system. If we look at the graph here, a lot of the times the nervous system grants us access or sets a default to the mid-range of motion. So if we're looking at it here, this guy is the torque, the x-axis is the angle. So you can see we pretty much have most of our strength in that mid-range. For example, if we were to take just a simple bicep curl, we're usually strongest in that mid-range. The beginning and the end is where we're not as strong. We're able to produce more torque, more tension, and therefore recruit more motor units. With the PAILs and RAILs, PAILs for example, we're trying to shift this graph over to the right and create tissue adaptation and some strengthening in this side of the graph. The RAILs is going to create that adaptation in the shorter range of that particular exercise, that particular angle. So in performing the isometrics, you're basically creating and teaching your nervous system to control this newly acquired range of motion. Before doing these though, however, you want to make sure that one, there's no pain, and I would say have a good general warm-up to increase your core temperature before performing. So the benefits of performing the PAILs and RAILs, you're creating that tissue adaptation. You're gaining control over both the shortened and the lengthened position of the tissue. You're creating neuroplasticity within the tissue and the connection of those motor units and engaging in those said shortened or lengthened positions. And just overall, you're getting stronger in positions where one could be vulnerable. Alright, so we're going to be taking Zach through a 90-90 position here, focusing on the front hip, which is an external rotation. Main thing you want to start with is the setup of a proper 90-90 in both legs. So front leg should be out here, creating 90 degrees here. Back leg should also be at 90 degrees here. One easy way to kind of line things up is making sure this ankle, knee, and that foot line up. So I would have him move right there. So now, in terms of anatomical position, his ASIS right through here is in line with his knee. Nice straight line. Alright, so once they're in a good proper 90-90 position, what you'll find sometimes if they have tight external rotators is you're going to find some room right on that front leg. So first thing you want to instruct is make sure the knee presses down into the ground. After that, we want to cue a little anterior pelvic tilt, so just think staying nice and tall. Now, common fault you'll find is people will just kind of go down. So just imagine like you're on a nice tall, someone's pulling you with some puppet strings, and from there you're bringing your sternum forward over the knee. Shouldn't take long for you to feel a stretch, a passive stretch on that backside. If you get all the way here and you don't feel a stretch, then you're doing something wrong. So just remember anterior tilt, nice and tall, and bring that sternum forward over the front knee. So after we established a proper 90-90 position, the proper position of where the knee should be and where the torso should be relative to the progressive tissue being stretched, we want to make sure that we hold this position for at least 2 minutes. Studies in the literature shows that there should be a minimum of 2 minutes for there to be any tissue change. It varies from individual, but to keep it safe and to be safe, just stay around 2 minutes. So now we're going to get into the PAILs contraction, the progressive angular isometric loading. So he who masters tension masters range. So the first thing is to create good intra-abdominal pressure and create good tension irradiation throughout the body. So kind of sniff some air into your lower belly and send that signal all through your body, into your lats, into your back leg, into the whole body to create some tension. Now thinking of a scale, I want you to slowly scale under the ankle and scale under the knee there. I want you to slowly start to ramp it up, just about 10% at a time. So we're going to increase from 10% all the way to 100 within about 15 to 20 seconds. Ramp it up, good. So once we're at that 100%, we're going to hold it here again for 10-15 seconds. And now the regressive side of things is you want to think of that tissue on the opposite side, which would be the front side here. That muscle is responsible for lifting your leg up, pulling you forward. So on the regressive side of things, we're going to relax that contraction on the back and pull us deeper into the stretch, holding that contraction as we pull deeper into that stretch. Good. Hold that regressive side. So once we let go of that regressive side of things where we're trying to actively pull ourselves deeper into the stretch, we're going to just go ahead and relax that contraction. And once we're there, you're going to be allotted a certain degree now, further than what you had originally started. So once you're in that newly acquired range of motion, now you have to kind of calm the breath back down and bring the nervous system back down and take some long, deep breaths in this newly acquired range to essentially send that afferent to the brain and teach the brain that this is a range that you control. So a quick little recap with the pails and rails on the external rotation in the 90-90 position. You basically get your passive hold with all the cues we talked about. You hold for 2 minutes. Then we activate the progressive side of things. So all of this out here by pressing our leg and our knee down. Imagine that you have a scale and you're slowly ramping up to 100%. After we ramp up to 100%, we're going to create rails contraction, which will be the regressive side of things. This stuff here, pulling us deeper into the stretch. We hold that regressive contraction. Then we relax. We're allotted an extra range of motion in this stretch. Then we passively hold for another 30 to 1 minute in this newly acquired range of motion.